Good day and welcome to NBP Hot Seat. My name is Zaf Quelo from Nuclear Business Platform, and joining me today is Ms. Inna Pletukhina. Now, Inna is a legal professional focusing on nuclear power projects, including traditional and advanced reactor technologies, with a demonstrated history of working in the international affairs industry. She is currently in the energy infrastructure team of Hunton Andrews Kurth and has extensive experience in the international nuclear sphere, including her most recent tenure at the IAEA, where she has collaborated with operators, regulators, and national government stakeholders around the world on nuclear security. Welcome, Inna. We are delighted to have you with us today on NBP Hot Seat. How are you doing, Inna?
I'm doing okay. Thank you for having me, Zaf.
Fantastic, fantastic. So, Inna, let's start off first by can you briefly highlight your experience in the nuclear energy sector, especially during your recent work with the IAEA, Inna?
Zaf, you did such a great job with my bio. I don't think there's anything left. Well, as you mentioned, I am an a lawyer with Hunton Andrews Kurth. I am a part of the global nuclear team, and it's truly global. We have people around the world working on anything from national power programs of newcomer countries to advanced reactors programs and projects and SMRs. And we're really sort of a one-stop shop for anything countries may want when they're considering a new power program. So we advise clients on anything from sort of policy to transactions to legal aspects of contracts, of deals, etc. So it's really great to be a part of that team. And as you mentioned, I was just previously with the IAEA and with the Office of Legal Affairs. And I was privileged and really honored to execute the agency's milestone, which is the agency's first international conference on nuclear law, which happened in April, and I hope you were there.
Oh.
One of the things that we have achieved with that conference is also a book on nuclear law, the global debates, and I would really encourage everyone to take a look at it. It's accessible for free. It's now been translated to all of the UN official languages, so it's really meant to be accessible to everyone. And with the IAEA, with the Office of Legal Affairs, I've had a lot of conversations and a lot of insight into the sort of international legal framework. And prior to that, I was with the Office of Nuclear Security, Division of Nuclear Security, and I was an outreach officer. So my job was to collect and share stories and successes from the member states, as well as sort of advance the nuclear security mission around the world. So again, I work with the operators and with the regulators, with other government stakeholders to really figure out what's going on the ground, how can the agency help, and also to share that story of cooperation and of those successes.
Fantastic, fantastic. And it's great that you touch on the milestones and nuclear laws, because globally, what we're seeing right now is I would say, a resurgence, right? A resurgence in the interest in adopting nuclear energy, not just from countries which have got currently nuclear power plants, but also countries which do not have nuclear power plants, and
Yes.
they're looking at nuclear power as a potential source of not only combating climate change, but also to drive their country's industrial and economic aspirations. And what's even more exciting is because the potential advent of small modular reactors, which has given hope to many countries with smaller grid size to adopt nuclear energy. So what we are seeing is, and of course the IEA is covering this also, that there are more than 30 over newcomer countries which are considering to adopt nuclear power. Now, having worked with the agency and also in your experience dealing with countries and embarking on nuclear power program, from your experience, Inna, what are some of the key elements, in your opinion, which newcomer countries should think about or focus as they embark on their nuclear energy programs, Inna?
So I appreciate the way you phrase that question, key elements, because when you're thinking about a new nuclear power program, it's an overwhelming endeavor. There are so many things to think about, and it's just and it's a long-term endeavor, and it's a lot of investment in terms of money, in terms of human capital, in terms of time. So it could truly be an overwhelming kind of a thought process. So I would say maybe somewhat non-traditional, but for a lawyer, a very obvious answer: legal frameworks. But I don't just say it because I'm a lawyer. I say this because nuclear was born regulated. It's something that really truly allows us to enjoy in a sustainable manner nuclear, all of the potential of nuclear, not just nuclear power programs, but also nuclear applications. So it's the safety regulations, it's the security regulations, it's safeguards, it's all of the entire network sort of combined that allows us as a whole world community to enjoy these benefits. And nuclear legal frameworks, they take time, and they take a lot of time. And if you start with international treaties and international conventions, it takes a little bit of time to adhere to them. It takes a little bit of time to implement them. It also takes a little bit of time to actually put those obligations into national legislation and then into regulations. So something like that is a very long-term process that should be started as early as possible. And it's not just for the safety and security and the peaceful uses. It's also something that the investors will take a look at when they're considering whether or not to finance a particular program, because presence of that framework means or could mean a lower risk for that particular investment from their perspective. The second thing I would highlight is people, and in particular, human resources. There are a lot of countries in the world that are considering new nuclear power programs that may not necessarily have the human resources to put it in place. And it's human resources from sort of engineering perspective, it's human resources from perspective of legal teams, it's human resources from policy perspective, it's human resources from organizational and management perspective. Developing those also takes quite a bit of time. And it's something that could be started as early as, I don't know, middle school, as early as elementary. It's something to encouraging girls and women to take math classes or encouraging them to pursue the STEM education. So it's something that building up that pool of talent will take a little while, and it will take a lot of investment from the government as well. So it's something that also should be started as early as possible, with that focus on the technical aspects, but also on sort of the softer aspects like policy, communications, law, etc.
Fantastic. So nuclear laws and people, two key important elements. Now, it's interesting that you mentioned regulation and laws. And as I mentioned in my introduction, many countries are considering nuclear power also because of the potential or the incoming advent of small modular reactors. Now, many in the industry have mentioned that they hope that regulations pertaining to small modular reactors should be ideally different from governing large reactors, and it should not be that complicated or deep and complex as large reactors, because that might then hinder the potential adoption of small modular reactors. What's your opinion, Inna? And I know that many multilateral bodies are doing work already with regards to coming up with regulations for small modular reactors. But from a national regulators perspective, countries that are starting to form their regulatory body or already have a regulatory body, how should they handle regulations for small modular reactors? What should they be thinking about? If you could just very briefly highlight your thoughts on that, Inna.
Same thing. They should be thinking about security. They should be thinking about safety. They should be thinking about peaceful uses of whatever reactor they may be adapting. So there may be some differences in terms of, for instance, emergency response zones may be smaller. You may have slightly different requirements, but overall, they should be thinking about the same things. It may be slightly different scale, slightly different focus, slightly different maybe complexity. And of course, there are a lot of conversations about regulatory bodies may be overburdening with some administrative requirements, but that's not necessarily a function of it being them focusing on larger programs.
Yep.
It's really a different issue and a different conversation. But in terms of what should we be looking at when we're looking at SMRs, same things as what we're looking at for the large reactors.
Fantastic. So I guess, while you have highlighted what are the key things that countries should be looking at, nuclear laws, regulations, people, what are some of the common mistakes you have observed in new build programs, or rather, what should not have been put at top priority in your opinion, Inna?
So I don't know if I would call it mistakes, because I don't think there's really one size fits all approach when it comes to nuclear. Every country is different. Every national priority is different. Everybody's population and culture and context is also different. So I would not qualify it as anything as a mistake. It's just difference. So what I have seen a lot of countries do, which may be a natural reaction to when developing a national nuclear power program, is really considering technology first and money first. And those are kind of the two things that there are, of course, variables that should be considered and really must be considered, but there are also other variables that should not fall off the table. And I'm thinking in particular, so people and laws is one of them, as I mentioned earlier, but also it's when picking out a technology or picking out really a vendor, it's really a conversation about partnership. It's building a national nuclear power program, whether it's an SMR or a conventional power, takes a really long time. And once it's built and commissioned, it will continue, the relationship will continue as well. So it's really picking out the partner and who can you work with best, not so much picking out the technology. Does this reactor work for me? Does this reactor work for me? There is a lot of technology out there and it's all great, but it's really picking out who do you work with best to accomplish that mission, that goal, that for your country. So it's I would say it's kind of like, and my boss, George Borofaz, talks about this all the time. It's like picking out a marriage partner. So you want somebody who not just checks off the boxes, but you want somebody that you can have that connection with.
I agree. Partnerships. I guess, and you touch on how countries will be working with a vendor, and it's very important to understand the nuances also about, or rather the softer aspects of that potential partnership, not just focus on the superficial aspect, like you mentioned, the technology and the money portion. But I guess, like you also correctly mentioned, the nuclear sector it's a heavily regulated global
Yes.
sector, which means that, to be honest, most of the technologies I would say all the technologies are good technologies, just perhaps the fit of the output or the size or whatever. But technically speaking, it's all good technology, but one has to look at the softer aspect of it, the element of the people element, also the cultural element, also how can the partner stay with you for 60 years or beyond, right? To support not just the start of your power program, but throughout. I guess, on this aspect, what advice would you provide to newcomer countries as they start engaging with international vendors for their new build program? What are the questions, or what should they be looking out for as they engage with international vendor, or as international vendors start pursuing them?
You make it sound like a dating app. So I would say there are two things that I would advise the newcomer countries, or those considering this, developing a nuclear power program with a conventional or advanced reactor technologies. The first thing I would suggest is to really focus on what is that mission and what is that goal for yourself, because the vendors will come with the very nice outlay of technology, of services, of everything, and from the first glance they will all look great. but it's really not about fitting into what they're presenting. It's about having them fit into what you want. And it's developing a clear vision of that for your country, for the program, but for the country in general, will also help guide through the very long and likely not an easy process of getting the stakeholders on board, of getting the population on board, of getting everyone that needs to be involved on board. Because at the end of the day, that power program is for that country, it's for the people, it's for national objectives. So it's really having the vendors help you achieve those objectives, as opposed to just picking out whichever one looks flashier. So I would really recommend a little bit of that introspection and development of a clear vision and a clear mission that will sort of help lead you through that entire process.
Wonderful, wonderful.
The other thing, sorry, the other thing that I wanted to add, I got so excited about this, but the other thing that I wanted to add, and I think this is really from the perspective of a little bit of the IAEA experience talking, is that not to forget that no one is alone. There are a lot of countries around the world that have a wealth of experience, whether they have existing programs, whether they are considering programs, whether they're just starting programs. And there are a lot of examples out there of successful programs, projects built on time and on budget. We hear a lot about projects not built on time and on budgets, but there are projects built on time and on budget. And there are a lot of lessons learned, positive lessons learned, and positive approaches. UAE currently gets quoted as a sort of the shining beacon, but there's so many out there on anything from something as minute as access controls to access authorization to something like the grant policy for developing a program. So it's really, I would suggest that for the countries to not forget that they are really part of this global community.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Inna, thank you so much for providing a whole wealth of knowledge. To summarize what we discussed, we first talked about what are the key elements for newcomer countries as they embark on nuclear power program. You mentioned that nuclear laws, the human aspect, the people aspects are often things that people don't look for, but these are areas that newcomer countries should focus about. And when we talked about how to engage with international vendors, and the key thing here we talked about is partnership, right? It's all about partnership, not just a short-term partnership, but a long-term partnership, which vendor can see you through from the start and all the way to potentially 60 years and beyond. And lastly, we talked about the importance of learning from successful case studies of projects, of new build projects that have been happening on time. We talked about the UAE, and of course, there are many other countries that have also had successful projects which have met a deadline, timelines, and which newcomer countries can learn from. Inna, fantastic to really have you on board. Is there any final words from your end, Inna?
No, not really. I just I think this is exciting for me to be doing this work from now this perspective as an associate, as a lawyer, because I have seen countries achieve incredible things in this incredibly difficult process. And for me, this is really kind of an amazing opportunity to be on board and to be helping the countries achieve that mission, that bigger goal. So I really appreciate the opportunity to do this, but also I'm really excited to keep doing the work that I do.
Fantastic, fantastic. Inna, once again, a great pleasure to have you on board with us on NVP Hot Seat. To all our audience out there, if you enjoy our constant interviews with nuclear stakeholders and key leaders such as Inna, please subscribe to our channel, and you can view all our interviews with other global nuclear leaders. With that, this is Zaf Quelo signing out. Have a great day and see you soon. Bye-bye.